Several years ago, at the beginning of the pandemic, I created a video titled How to Appeal the Unemployment Denial. And that video received 30,000 views, and a subsequent video, part 2 video, received more than 10,000 views. And so as a result of those two videos, and considering in this day and age, a lot of people are being laid off from large companies and then smaller, lesser known companies as well, and will be or have been applying for unemployment, and probably some of them are going to be denied their unemployment. I thought it would be useful to really utilize this channel consistently in providing information that is helpful to people who have been affected by a recent layoff or who have been jobless for a long time, people who have applied for unemployment and been denied and don't understand the appeal process, or maybe they're not aware of the appeal process at all. Either way, I thought that I would use this platform to share as much helpful information as I possibly can. With that said, my name is Morgan Gervais, and you're watching Career Espresso. My background is in human resources, training, and recruiting, most recently recruiting for Amazon on a contract basis. And my contract was ended early this time around as a result of mass layoffs, and I'll get into that another time. But in this video, I wanted to talk about unemployment and the process of applying for unemployment and obtaining unemployment if you are not aware or have never had to do this before. And so first and foremost, I want to share that it's very important that you apply for unemployment the same day that you are let go, or the same week at least. There is a 1-week waiting period, and you don't want to prolong this process any longer than necessary. So as soon as you know that you're going to be laid off, or as soon as you're laid off, or you know what your end date is going to be, I want to encourage you. Of course, it's very upsetting and it's all very emotional, and you're probably like raw and still in the moment. But as much as possible, set aside some time to do that by the end of the day. If not by the end of the day, then preferably the next business day. You get that application going. And one of the reasons that I say that is not just because of the 1-week waiting time period, but there's information that you're going to have to provide that is going to have to be confirmed by your employer. And what I mean by that is when you complete this application online, you're going to have to confirm your employer's name and location, the last day that you worked, and what your earnings were. And you have to be factual and exact. It can't be an estimate or a range. You have to give the exact amount of money that you were making on a biweekly basis. If you were paid biweekly, if you're paid monthly, then of course you want to provide that on a monthly basis. You might actually have to break it down into biweekly amounts, because I think the system only allows for biweekly. Now, of course, there is an interview that you will have to have with a representative of the unemployment agency, and they will confirm all of this as well. But as much as possible, be as specific as you can when filling out this application. So you're going to confirm your employer, your last day, your earnings. The employer will be notified to confirm this information. The information that you're providing is going to be based on gross earnings, not net. So your gross is before tax earnings. And then how much you have in your bank accounts, including savings, may be a condition. You're going to have to register with a job site and then actively be pursuing new employment, and you're going to have to prove that in most instances. They will ask you to give the name and phone number of the company that you have applied for, the position you've applied for, and then what the status is. Have you heard back from them? Have you had an interview? Have you been offered a job? There's a lot of factors that play into whether or not you are approved for unemployment. After the interview, to confirm all of the details, the employer, your former employer, has an opportunity to dispute or contest your claim for unemployment. Now, some companies will have a policy in place to dispute all claims. Some employers will have a conversation with you about this before you leave and explain that they're not going to contest or dispute your claim, in which in most instances it's best for everyone involved that that be the case, but they are still going to be informed or notified by the Employment Development Department to confirm the information, so you still want to be truthful. If you work for a company that is going to dispute your claim, regardless of the circumstances, and sometimes you may not know this until you actually receive the denial letter in the mail, then you want to read the letter very carefully from beginning to end, because there's always stated in this letter an appeal process. And typically it's going to be that you need to appeal within 20 days, and you have to do so in writing. Then what happens is the employer receives this new information or amended information, and they have an opportunity to dispute for a second time or contest for a second time. You also have an opportunity to appeal for a second time the employer's denial or the employer's dispute to your claim. At this point, you'll go before an administrative law judge, and the administrative law judge will determine your eligibility for employment benefits or not, unemployment benefits or not. And I don't want anyone to get, excited about this or, overwhelmed by this information that you have to go before an administrative law judge, because it's not like anything that you've seen on television. It's not like Judge Judy or Court TV. It's just really a conference room with you and the employer or the employer representative, and then the judge, the person who's going to be making the determining decision. And they won't do so right then and there in the room with you. They may make the decision, but they won't share that with you. The information or the conclusion will be shared with you in writing. Now, here's a piece of information that I think was very helpful to people who were being denied unemployment during the pandemic, and it applies now, always applies. If you go through this entire process and appeal all the way up into the point where you are going before the administrative law judge, you and your employer, to discuss these facts, and your employer or employer representative does not show up, that almost always works out in your favor, and more often than not, you will be awarded benefits. So I always like to encourage people, see the process through to the end. If you have to go through this process, see it through all the way to the end, because it could work in your favor. In some instances, and it would be nice if they all were like this, but in some instances you won't have to appeal, there will be no dispute, there won't be any disagreements or arguments about whether or not you deserve unemployment benefits. It'll just be awarded, and your employer won't get involved, your former employer won't get involved at all, and that's what we all hope for, right? Bear in mind that unemployment is only good for about 6 months, and it's not nearly enough money to live off of. It's a fraction of whatever you were making with your employer. In most cases, if you were making, I don't even know how to explain it, because it varies by, it's based on how much you made in a particular quarter and then how much you earn either hourly or annually. So there's no way for me to really say you have to make a certain amount or a minimum amount to get this. It depends on your circumstances, how much you made in the quarter that they are basing your reward on, and then also how much your earnings were. So if you are someone who makes $15 an hour and you work 40 hours a week, your benefit amount might be less than someone who makes $25 an hour and works 40 hours per week. So the maximum amount of money that you can get per week on unemployment is $450. So every 2 weeks, that's $900. And every month, that's about $1,800. And I say about because I think there is a way that it's calculated that actually ends up being just a little bit more than $1,800, but it's not going to be anywhere near, let's say, $2,000. It's not going to be that much greater. And it certainly won't be enough to cover most of your expenses on a month-to-month basis, considering considering if you live in California, or some of the other expensive states like